Today, I will be explaining the top 7 deadliest backrooms entities of all time. These are creatures that you could not survive an encounter with. They have the most horrific designs, descriptions, personalities, hunting methods, and they're usually the ones that are a threat to any human they encounter. These entities live in the deepest and darkest, most isolated section of what we call the backrooms, and they wait and watch to eat your flesh. So go ahead and lock in, grab some popcorn, get ready to be scared. Thank you for watching, and let's get into these entities, shall we? Also, leave a like if you want more long videos, that way I know you do. Bye! So before I explain the creature, its history, and all that stuff, you first have to understand exactly what sleep paralysis is. So sleep paralysis puts an individual in an in-between state of sleeping and being awake, a state of limbo, if you will. During this limbo, the individual becomes aware of their surroundings, but their muscles and their ligaments are paralyzed. So pretty much you can see what's around you, but you can't move. You also can't talk either. In real life, only about 7.6% of people have this phenomena, but we are not in real life. In this canon, we are in the backrooms, and in the backrooms, it doesn't care about statistics. So when you're trapped in this liminal hellscape, your pain, your suffering, your mind, your trauma, your fears, and all your irrational phobias are given life. And they'll haunt you when you're awake walking around, but it's worse when you try to fall asleep. That's where this entity comes into play. This entity has been given a couple of names. Entity 58, the sleep paralysis demon, or even just the demon is what it's known by. And it's considered to be one of the least understood creatures in all of the backrooms lore. It's physically dangerous, and it can give someone lasting mental effects as well. But let's get right into the biology of this entity, that way we can put together a proper timeline of events if you encounter it. So as of right now, it's impossible to say if the entity has the power to actually invade people's heads when they're in sleep paralysis, or if it's just an invisible entity that's invisible to other people nearby. We don't know if it's physical or mental yet. But what we do know is that during an attack from this creature, the bystanders cannot see it and they cannot hear it, but they can see the wounds that the victim receives. So it seems like the victim can see and hear and touch whatever it is. And to be honest, that makes it more terrifying, because even if your friends wanted to help you, they couldn't, because they couldn't see what's attacking. The entity has also been known to take many forms, or shapeshifts, as they've been named, and I'm going to get into all those shapeshifts right now. Shape number 1 is the rarest form, and it is a grotesque embodiment of darkness that hides in your peripheral vision. You really can't fully see it ever, and as it appears, it appears right out of view in the corner of your eye. But if you look over at it, you'll be consumed by the darkness. You gotta keep your eyes open. Now, shapeshift number 2 is just a vague, expansive darkness. Kind of like when you're looking into a room and there's a dark corner. There's not necessarily a shape or anything to it in this shapeshift. You just know there's a shadow there. You know something's there. It just takes the form of a shadow. Shapeshift 3 takes the appearance of a very tall, shadowy, hairless, humanoid figure. This figure is estimated to be about 10 foot tall and has very long and bony arms and fingers, and it looks ungainly with a huge mouth and large features, and this creature has also been reported to have very unnerving characteristics. As if a giant shadow isn't unnerving enough? I don't know. Now, Shapeshift 4 is a strange turn of events, because this version has the entity taking the appearance of a shadowy human figure with, like, octopus features. So the body and shape is also very non-Euclidean and glitchy, and it doesn't seem to obey physics. Its legs can extend for over like 20 feet, and its arms and stuff kind of just glitch and warp constantly. So imagine a shadow shaped like an octopus with legs and arms that can stretch out forever. The final form of this creature that's been seen is the most common, and that is Shapeshift 5. It is just a blurry creature figure that cannot be identified by any features. It looks kinda human from far away, but not so much as it does in Shapeshift 3. Anyways, this is the one you're most likely to see, just a blurry human type shape that you can't make out any features on, which is kinda better than a giant shadow human or a giant octopus thing, I guess. Before this entity was discovered, most people thought that the random wanderers' bodies that they would find in the backrooms were just mangled victims of hounds and skin stealers and smilers and so on. But now that we know this thing exists, it could be the reason for all these horrific injuries, and the reason so many wanderers are found not walking around, if you know what I'm saying. After all, you can't run away from something if you can't move. And that is seemingly the only reason this creature attacks during sleep paralysis. It's unknown if the creature itself causes sleep paralysis, or if it just knows that when a human is in sleep paralysis they can't move. We're not sure yet. Again, we're still learning about more and more every day. It's assumed that the rate of sleep paralysis is way higher in the backrooms due to what I was saying earlier. You know, there's higher trauma, higher isolation, you're by yourself constantly, and you see these weird creatures, you see these weird environments. It makes your head see things. So this entity uses that trauma and isolation as a way to hunt and ultimately consume. But how does it actually work? It's said that the creature targets wanderers who sleep on hard surfaces. So like the ground or a table or like wood or something. And this matters for a few things. Sleeping on a hard surface actually changes the electrical waves that your brain puts out, and it channels them differently. So once the entity seemingly notices a wanderer falling asleep, they'll wait for the brain waves to be at that exact point right between sleep and right between awakeness for sleep paralysis to happen. And then once they notice it, it will jump into the wanderer's view. Again, no one else can see it, only the person experiencing it can see it, so it has to have some kind of cloaking mechanism, or it appears in their mind. So at the start of an experience with this entity, it always seems to manifest itself like 5 to 7 yards away from the victim until the victim falls fully into paralysis where they can't move. After this point, the creature will then move inches closer over time, each blink moving it closer and closer until it attacks you, while your friends watch helplessly by the sidelines. Theories on what this creature actually is range from it being a puppet of a stronger entity to it just being all a dream, and the victims were attacked by an actual entity, not this creature. But the evidence does point towards it being a very powerful entity that has the ability to cloak itself in sleep paralysis, or cloak itself to anyone watching that's not the victim. And it chooses to show its final form to its victim almost as like playing with its food. You know, it kind of shows itself and then knows that the person can't move, and then it goes after him. So if you do fall into sleep paralysis and you end up experiencing this entity, the best way to stay alive is to try to keep eye contact with it, because this will sometimes wake you up. It'll kickstart your adrenaline and you'll wake up. On the other hand, do not ever look away if this entity is in your field of view or anything, because the second you do, or you lose sight of it, it'll move closer and closer until it can attack you. Also, just don't sleep on hard surfaces, because that will amplify those sleeping waves and lure the entity closer to you. But yeah, that was the sleep paralysis demon. Seems like a pretty cool guy, right? I wonder who'd win in a fight though, the sleep paralysis demon or Pinhead, the creature I made. Let me know in the comments. So the primary ColorMan is a part of the Leon Vincible Entities lore. Now, this lore is very similar to Trevor Henderson creatures, and you might have actually seen some of his creations. The Train Eater, the Dentist, the Camera Heads, they're all from Leon Vincible's lore. They were created by a guy named Adam Woodsmith, a horror artist who just really loves to depict strange and macabre entities in kind of a found footage format. He has a cool YouTube channel as well, go check it out. Anyways, he created the primary ColorMan, and that's what we're going to get into right now, the entity. The primary ColorMan takes the appearance of a large, ungainly humanoid being. Now, accounts on these specific things regarding the description differ from person to person, but the one consistent is the coloration of this entity. It's always red, blue, and yellow, the primary colors. He's been seen having tri-colored stripes running down the length of his body. His eyes are small and beady, with white eyes and black irises. And usually, he's been seen with a huge, unnatural smile stretched across his face. The smile is very unnerving, especially to look at, and it gives people who are victims and who encountered this creature a very bad vibe, and for a very good reason. The teeth of the primary ColorMan are human size and shape, but there's normally way more teeth inside the mouth than a normal person would have. As far as the personality of the entity, it's been described as malevolent and vindictive, and it hunts humans for sport. It seems like it's a fun game for this creature to hunt and to unalive people. He's even been seen and heard laughing while he's stalking a victim. The abilities. The primary ColorMan is decently strong, but not really the most powerful entity in the Leon Vincible lore. But it's not the physical strength of the entity that it needs to rely on anyhow. It's assumed that the PCM can disrupt the senses of its target and cause complete and utter overstimulation. This will cause hallucinations and tinnitus and that sort of thing to occur in the victim. The hallucinations usually involve warping of colors and vision, which makes sense because it's the primary color man warping colors, whatever, you get it. The creature itself also does not obey the laws of physics at all, and it's been seen passing through solid objects like walls and the ground with ease, just passing right through them. He also seemingly has a very strange way of unaliving his poor innocent victims. Fair warning, it's kind of disgusting, but if you're down for that, then here you go. One of the methods the entity uses is some sort of ability that occurs when he touches the target. Doing this will cause the human target to overstimulate their brain and make their brain go from 0 to 100 instantly. Essentially, think of your brain turning into static. That's what it does when the primary color man touches you. Once this happens, all the primary colors will begin to drip out of your eye sockets and down your cheeks, essentially just sucking all the brains out of your head through your eyeballs in the form of color. I told you it'd be weird, but that was pretty gross, I gotta say. After the entity lets go of the victim, their lifeless body will collapse to the ground and leak all the colors from all their orifices. It's unknown the exact physical way this happens, but it's just assumed it's another one of the powers the primary color man has. It just overloads and overstimulates all your senses, particularly your eyesight, your smell, and your hearing, to the point where your brain just can't take it anymore, and it just melts through your eyeballs. Hopefully that doesn't get me demonetized. I have a feeling it might, but I hope it does. So who does the primary color man attack? What are the victims of this creature? Normally, it likes to attack people while they're sleeping or in like a helpless state. So if they're in their bed, if they're in their house alone, or if they're exploring some abandoned place and they're all alone, that's typically who it goes for. Some reports have even claimed that the creature can infiltrate the dreams of victims and kind of cause them horror in that way, almost as if it's like taunting them or something. You might see something dash from your peripheral or an arm reach out from the side of you, and you look over and it's nothing there. It's because he's taunting you, of course. In a disturbing twist, the primary color man is often depicted inside of indoor playgrounds in things like ball pits and slides and things like that. Which, of course, these places are frequented by children, which might mean that this entity hunts kids. I mean, it'd be pretty easy to blend into all the colorful ball pits and mats and slides and stuff, since it's the same color as the primary color man. And because of this, it's safe to say, never go into a ball pit or a trampoline park alone at all, because you have no idea what might be lurking in the bottom of a ball pit. Yet another strange twist of events, the primary color man has been known to be seen in the back rooms. And it seems that the backrooms itself can't even contain him. That's how powerful he is. He can glitch right through walls to get back to real life. So this dude just can go from the backrooms to real life almost as a vacation, while everyone else is stuck down there forever. That's pretty cool. There's actually a counterpart entity to the primary color man that goes by the very creative name of the secondary color woman, who, you guessed it, is a woman entity patterned with secondary colors: purple, oranges, and greens. She has long hair and looks much more human than the primary color man does. The difference is, she's actually not evil and doesn't want to make your brain leak color fluid out of your eyes. She's actually very kind and tends to help people that are being chased by the original entity. She can actually open up holes in walls to kind of form tunnels for you to run through if the primary color man is chasing you. And she's been known to fight it off in like heated fistfights. So good on you, secondary color woman. We appreciate you. Now, it's unknown if these entities are related, and it's also unknown where they came from. But they do seem to exist in this weird sort of state between consciousness and dreaming. So we don't really know where they fall, but we do know they're real. And you better hope that if you encounter one of them, you encounter the secondary color woman and not the primary color man, if you like your brains not liquid and colorful. So this entity, like I just said, is called Entity 832, aka Pinhead. It's called Pinhead because it sort of resembles the shape of a bowling pin. It's believed that there is only actually one entity that can somehow project itself to different places, but that's not confirmed. Entity 832 can only appear on odd numbered levels, so levels like 1, 3, and 5, and so on. And even then, it's just a 16.7590% chance of it actually showing up and making itself known. And you better hope it doesn't. Pinhead appears to you when you fall asleep on the floor of an odd level, but only the floor. And when it does appear to you, you'll start to lucid dream, which is where you can control where your character or yourself is moving, and you know you're in a dream, but you can't stop it. And the only way to stop this dream is by falling asleep in the dream. More on that later. Pinhead somehow transports you to a reality in this lucid dream, and this reality is your house from real life. It's literally like a live video feed of reality. You can see everyone in your own life that's just going about their daily lives at home and outside, but they can't see you because you're just invisible. You can't interact with any objects, you just float around. But it is confirmed that the reality you see is the real world. You're actually there, you're just invisible to everybody, and Pinhead sent you here. Now this feeling of being trapped back in the quote-unquote real world is really addicting to some people because it's reality, and they try to stay in this dream forever, which is just what Pinhead wants. Because people can like this dream so much that their real body that's in the back rooms that's dreaming ends up being neglected because they're asleep. So your body itself can wither away and you can unalive from starvation. Inside the dream itself, Pinhead walks around and torments you the entire time you're in reality. He insults you and he says stuff like, "You've always been invisible, you're so far away, they don't even miss you," and other lame things like that. Pinhead also will try to jump scare you and talk you out of falling asleep in the dream, which is how you exit that dream. So every time you're about to fall asleep, Pinhead will try to jump in front of you or wake you up some way. You just have to ignore him to go back to normal sleep. There's been 2 instances where Pinhead has physically been in the backrooms with people, and those 2 people are no longer with us. Both of them were eaten by Pinhead, and all that was left was their heads. It's thought that those 2 people stayed in their fake dream that was reality for too long, and they ended up being too weak to escape Pinhead's attack in real life. So 2 out of 8 total encounters with Pinhead have ended in unaliving, while the other 6 have lived through it, but each of them have certain mental issues from seeing reality but not being able to interact with it, or seeing someone they love and not being able to talk to them. So Pinhead's entire twisted goal is to appear in your head right as you fall asleep on an odd numbered level. If he appears to you in your head, he'll make you dream about the real world. This dream isn't really a dream because it's real. He literally sends you to reality, just as an invisible person. And the entire time you're there, he keeps trying to scare you and make your stay longer, so your real body in the backrooms will weaken enough for him to teleport out of the dream and then attack you and eat you. And you would be too weak to fight back. That's absolutely terrifying. The 6 survivors say that they left the dream by finding a room in their house with lots of windows inside and sleeping in it. Apparently, Pinhead doesn't like bright lights. And when they fell asleep in the dream, they were sent back to normal sleeping, which they then woke up from on the level they went to sleep on. And apparently, Pinhead will not attack if you aren't deteriorated enough, so if you manage to wake up, he won't attack you. Now, this might mean that he's too small or not strong enough to unalive a healthy person, but no one knows the real reason. All that's known is that the 2 people who were gone were probably deteriorated and malnourished from staying in the dream for too long. Also, you should definitely avoid sleeping on the floor of any odd-numbered level because you got a 16.7% chance of having Pinhead appear in your head and forcing you to dream about reality and trying to keep you there. Entity number 116 in the backrooms are commonly referred to as dentists by people that are stuck in these levels. They appear to be entities that resemble a melted and warped, rough shape of a human, except that's about all that they share with humans. The rest of the dentist creature is the exact opposite of being a real human. The bodies of dentists are made out of flesh from their victims, as well as their teeth, their gums, and their jaws as well. These different mouth parts have been harvested by the victims of the dentist and placed all over their bodies. When a dentist entity is young and they haven't really hunted a human for their first time, their body won't have any of the teeth or any of the jaws or anything on it yet. Instead, young dentist entities appear to be skinless, small humanoids that look like little zombies running around. There's nothing on them but their flesh, and that's it. However, when the dentists mature and they get older, more teeth, more tongues, more jaws, more gums, and all of that will begin to appear all over the body in mass amounts. They'll just keep growing and growing. I'll get into how they harvest all the mouth stuff later, don't you worry. The heads of the dentist entities are typically stripped down just to jaw bones, and there's really no eyes to speak of. There might be holes where eyes should be, but there are no eyes. They have small ear holes as well that are very sensitive and they can hear from very far distances. But the main draw to the face, of course, is the massive jaws and mouth of these creatures. The jaws can open to an absurdly wide angle, and they can chomp down with an inhuman force. Of course, this is due to their love for consuming teeth and bones. They need something to be able to crush them. Once a dentist is more matured and has racked up more victims, like I said, its body will be covered with more teeth and more tongues and more bones. As they get even older, these clumps of teeth will make it actually hard for the dentist to move around. There's so many teeth, so many bones on their bodies, kind of just shoved and melted into them, that it makes them kind of waddle around and be top heavy. Some of them can barely even walk and they kind of fall over when they do. A shiny layer of saliva and phlegm covers the entire dentist, and this liquid also leaks off of them and kind of leaves a trail behind where they walk, sort of like a snail trail. This phlegm gives the teeth and the bones and stuff on the outside of the creature a shiny and glimmering look, and it also has a disgusting, abhorrent stench that emanates from it as well, and it's as horrible as you might expect. Because of this, you will likely hear or smell a dentist entity before actually seeing it. It is unknown as of right now just how many of these dentist entities are roaming through the backrooms, but it is assumed that the majority of them reside in level 64 and they reproduce asexually there. However, there have been some instances on other levels, which I'll talk about later, but just know that you probably should avoid level 64 because of this. Dentists emit loud, gurgling, and chortling noises as well that are similar to how it sounds when you gargle mouthwash. These things do not try to hide themselves, they do not attack by hunting stealthily or anything like that. They do not rely on surprise, and that is not the name of their game. They are disgusting, they are grotesque, and they know it. Instead of surprise attacks and stuff, dentists will hobble towards wanderers the second they sense them nearby. Like I said, they can hear really well, so they might hear you first. In the event that a dentist catches a person, they will then tackle that person, pin them down, or otherwise incapacitate them, and they'll instantly begin to pry open that person's jaws and take their gums, their molars, their jawbones, their tongue, and everything inside the mouth. After this, they will consume them via their mouth, and their body will absorb whatever they just ate, and it'll appear on the outside of their skin. Now, the victim, which is you in this instance, will usually be alive for the beginning part of this extraction, but they typically eventually succumb to the injuries of having their mouths ripped off. If a wanderer somehow survives, the dentist will then finish the job via strangulation, blunt force, or suffocation. Even though dentist entities are large and they're cumbersome and they're lethargic and they're just covered in bones and teeth, they usually get huge bursts of energy when they're about to attack people. It's kind of like an adrenaline rush or something, and this kind of gives them enough power to win most fights they enter. So because of this, you need to avoid them first by either smelling them or hearing them and getting the exact opposite way, just running away. The scent of these disgusting creatures is thought to come from the gums that the dentist consumes, because they always appear to be in a constant state of decomposition and rot, just like old flesh would be. And that mucousy phlegm that comes out of their bodies is also said to have this extremely sour and rancid smell, because it is the saliva of all their victims mixed together and coming out of their own pores. The phlegm itself is also really toxic and corrosive, and people that have had a dentist try to take their teeth or have been touched by a dentist have noticed decay and rot where that mucus has touched them. Here is a picture of that when it happens. As you can see, the teeth are turning black and they're rotting out of that person's face. Hopefully YouTube doesn't kick my channel to the shadow realm for showing that picture. Anyways, the most notable sense that the dentist utilizes are their insane abilities to hear. Those small ear holes on the side of their head, yeah, they're extremely sensitive and they can literally pick up small sounds from over 1.5 miles away. This is thought to be because they don't have any eyes, so they rely more on their hearing, but that's neither here nor there. They can hear really good, they're very strong, and they attack you and take your teeth. What else do you need to know? The grip strength and the finger strength of these creatures is also insanely high, because they literally can pry your mouth open and reach in and just rip out anything they want to. Obviously that takes a lot of strength, but they also have a lot of precision. Their fingers are long and spindly and sharp, and they kind of act like dentist tools that go in your mouth and just go to work. These things are the epitome of disgusting and disturbing life in the backrooms. This vaguely humanoid, fleshy, disgusting creature that literally seeks to devour anything it sees. How could it get more backroomsy than that? I don't know. The creatures were first discovered when Meg explorers were on level -33, and they saw a teethy humanoid figure trying to attack some poor wanderer. The Meg officials then neutralized the creature after 14 crossbow shots, mind you, and they noted that the teeth on the outside of these creatures kind of acts like body armor because things will just bounce off them since they're teeth. But hopefully after this explanation, you can now see where the creature gets its name from, the dentists, because it acts like a dentist to take, you know, your teeth and gums and stuff away. It is unknown why it does this, it is unknown where these things come from, but they do reproduce asexually, and they live on level 64 mainly. But with all that information said, I think it's safe to say you should avoid level 64, unless you hate your teeth and want them gone. That is all the information we have on dentists. They're grotesque, they're uncanny, and they're pretty much everything that's horrible about the backrooms. Leave a like if you think you could survive an encounter with a dentist entity, even though I know that you couldn't. Basically, Johnny seems to be a shadowy, dark entity of an unknown physical size. Most people that see him really don't survive the encounter to give accurate details, but from the few that have, or the few that have pictured him, he seems to be a grotesque, dark shape with large white eyes. He smells of rot and decay, and he behaves very sadistically and malevolently. Johnny can sense when lights turn on in this level, and the second one does, he will sprint at an unnaturally quick pace to that location. That's how he hunts. He seems to mainly hang out in that dining room area where those heads are at the center of the level. So if you wander to that room, or if you accidentally get there on purpose, it'll be the last thing you do, most likely. Johnny's attacks are vicious and aggressive, and he will slash and bite and do anything in order to despawn you or his victims. After this, he will then take their head back to the table for display. He kind of seems to feed off of fear. It is unknown if Johnny is some kind of mutated entity, like a wretch or a hound or a redkin, or what his true form is. But since the level is covered in this misty darkness, and Johnny's full body has never been seen, we can just guess that he looks gross, because he smells gross. Whatever or whoever it is, he does not like letting people visit the level, and will do anything to get your head on his table. So first up for this video is Entity 987, aka the God on level 532. Now this entity is deeply ingrained into the Backrooms history and lore because it seems to be very similar to a god that exists in ancient texts that have been found in the Backrooms. I'll leave the full article linked below. Go check it out if you want to see how it is so ingrained, because it's crazy and you should check it out. But to keep it simple, I'll go over the basics here. Backrooms Entity 987 is classified as an IETS rating of 5B, which means it's extremely dangerous to humans and highly intelligent. Now, the actual creature itself is a humanoid-type entity that was actually found locked inside of a small room on level 532. In this small room is a prison cell. Its skin is dark gray, and it looks really old and worn. It only wears a ripped-up robe from head to toe, and its face is really smooth with no facial features, except for one blue eye in the middle. It doesn't even have a mouth, but somehow it can talk, and it doesn't just speak English, it can speak most human languages. The entity seems to not be able to escape the cell it's locked in, except it can, and I'll explain in a second. But everyone should avoid this cell at all costs, because every time somebody goes there, something bad happens. Now, there is an entity log between someone and the entity on this page, and that someone is a Meg officer named David Armstrong. And David Armstrong was supposed to go to this entity, approach it, and ask a few questions about making a deal, so Meg could see how this entity would respond to bribes and questioning. Now, Armstrong went into the room alone, right in front of the prison cell, and other people waited outside of the room to see what would happen. After Armstrong introduces himself to the entity, even though the entity already knew his name, he asks the entity if he can grant Armstrong eternal life. So he's pretty much saying, you know, are you powerful enough to give me eternal life? The entity says that he can, and the doctor wants to do a handshake to seal the deal. So he sticks his hand through the prison door, and the entity grabs to shake his hand back. Except, this electrocutes the doctor and makes his body fall to the floor. Then the entity's body slumps back into the cell, but the doctor gets up and turns around and looks at the entity in the cell and says, quote, "Have fun with your immortality, David," and then walks up the stairs, leaving the mind and the soul of the doctor trapped in the body of the entity in the cell. Nice. So, yeah, I guess the entity is free now in the body of Dr. Armstrong. Or maybe he could have already moved to another body. Who knows? Next up for the video is Entity 45, or the Chupavitas. This entity has an IETS rating of 3B+, which means that they're pretty smart and they're really dangerous. These creatures were originally thought to be legends or ghost stories or made up because of how they look, but we're pretty sure they're real. They take the form of ghostly humanoids that are sitting around a campfire, bonfire type thing, except that isn't actually what they look like, that's just what they show themselves as. And they do this in order to lure prey to them. And if you're smart, you might notice that some things seem off about this scene. The fire that they're supposedly sitting around doesn't actually give out any heat. Instead, it actually seems to take warmth away from anybody who goes near it. And that will make you weaker. Now, these entities normally appear near places that people don't really go to and entities don't really go to. That way they kind of seem more out in the middle of nowhere. And for this reason, it was originally thought that they weren't even real. Now, these creatures are even more powerful than making a fake fire, though. They can also transform themselves to look like normal people, and even talk like them too. When a real wanderer comes to this fire and is lured in to sit down with them, they'll sit down and they'll be under the illusion that they're getting warmer and relaxing and they're talking with these random people. Since the Chupavitas can show themselves as real humans, a wanderer would just think they're talking to random strangers. When in reality, the fire they're sitting at is taking their warmth and their life force, and the entities sitting around are not friendly. They try to convince you to stay there longer and longer by telling stories and saying, "Oh, don't go," but they make you stay even longer to take your life force. Some people have been able to escape the trap in the middle of it, but if they do, they seem to have big chunks of their memories missing, or even parts of their identity missing too. Like, you can't even remember half your stuff at that point. A long time ago, these creatures could barely mimic human speech, and people always avoided them. But it seems like over time, they've gotten more and more smart, and even more bold in luring people over, which is kind of creepy that they're evolving.